Elena was a woman with an iron character. Her son Alexander, who always admired his mother, never saw anything strange in her behavior. For him, she was a model of perseverance and discipline. But his wife, Maria, felt differently. As soon as Elena crossed the threshold of their house, she began her endless remarks. "Your cleaning is lame," she said, running her finger along the edge of the shelf. "And you still haven't learned how to cook borscht." Maria held back, even though a real volcano was boiling inside her. She understood that Alexander would always be on her mother's side, so it was useless to argue. Sometimes it seemed to her that there was something more behind Elena's mask of severity, but Maria couldn't figure out what it was. Elena sometimes went to her room, locking the door with a key. Maria noticed more than once how she looked at the old box for a long time, but what was kept in it remained a mystery. These moments caused her vague anxiety and increased the feeling that her mother-in-law was hiding something. And Maria also recalled Elena's strange calls. The conversations weren't long, but each time she looked depressed after them. But one day everything changed. Maria came home earlier than usual that day. The mother-in-law, who thought that there was no one in the apartment, stood in the kitchen and cried. Her hands were shaking, and there was an old photograph on the table, Elena with a little boy, obviously not Alexander. Maria froze, not knowing what to say. But at that moment, her mother-in-law noticed her. "Are you home yet?" Quickly wiping away her tears, she asked, trying to regain her usual sternness. "Who is this boy?" Maria asked, pointing at the photo. Elena froze. Her face changed, and instead of the usual severity, fatigue appeared. "It's none of your business," she said abruptly and left the kitchen. Maria didn't insist, but her curiosity wouldn't let her rest. She decided to find out what her mother-in-law was hiding. Sometimes it seemed to her that Alexander was avoiding the topic of his mother, as if he didn't want to find out about her secret either. The next day, Maria found in an old album several faded photographs of the boy, signed with the name Mark. She showed them to Alexander, but he just shrugged his shoulders. Mom never talked about any Mark. Could it be one of her relatives? But there was doubt in Maria's eyes. Have you noticed that she always hides her emotions? Maybe she has a secret that she's afraid to talk about. Alexander just waved him off, but Maria couldn't forget her mother-in-law's tears. This feeling intensified when she remembered the strange moments again, the box, the locked room, Elena's rare smiles, so insincere. A few days later, Maria ran into Elena again. This time, she decided to ask directly. "Elena, who is Mark?" In response, the mother-in-law paled, but this time she did not remain silent. She sighed heavily, her hands shaking as she reached for a glass of water. "Mark." She paused, as if trying to find the strength to continue. "This is my first son. He died many years ago." Maria gasped. "Alexander doesn't know anything about this?" "No," Elena looked away. "I never wanted him to know. I was afraid he wouldn't feel loved enough." Maria looked at her mother-in-law with surprise. She had never seen her so vulnerable. Her voice was trembling, and there were tears in her eyes. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" Maria asked. "Because it hurts to remember," Elena replied, wiping away her tears. "But maybe it's time." That evening, at dinner, Elena started the conversation herself. The rain was rustling outside the window, the drops were tapping on the glass, as if beating the rhythm of her confession. She told Alexander and Maria about Mark and how the loss of her son had changed her. "Now you know why I'm so strict," she said. "I was afraid that I would lose you too, Alexander. That's why I always tried to keep everything under control." Alexander hugged his mother, and at that moment Maria realized that Elena Nikolaevna's outward severity hid deep pain. She remembered how she had first noticed her vulnerability that day in the kitchen. However, this story had another unexpected twist. A few days later, Maria decided to ask the neighbors who had known Elena for many years. One of the old-timers, Baba Katia, confirmed that Elena really had a son, Mark. But she added, "His death was a tragedy, but there is something strange about it. None of us knows what really happened." They said it was an accident, but many at the time were whispering about something else. These words made Maria uneasy. She decided to find out more and started searching for archival documents. Her search led her to the district library, where she found an old newspaper article. It told about a fire that happened many years ago in Elena's house. Little Mark died, and the cause of the fire remained unclear. The neighbors accused Elena of negligence, but the investigation could not prove her guilt. When Maria showed this article to Alexander, he sat in silence for a long time. Then, taking a deep breath, he said, "That explains a lot. Now I understand why my mother was so afraid to leave me alone, why she was so strict." Maria decided not to tell her mother-in-law about the article she found. She felt that Elena was already carrying too heavy a burden. Instead, she began to pay more attention to her, trying to support and help. A lot has changed since then. Elena became softer, and Maria no longer felt hostility towards her. They found a common language, and family evenings were filled with warmth and laughter. Now, over tea, Maria and Elena could spend hours discussing recipes and sharing secrets. Maria noticed that for the first time in many years, her mother-in-law was smiling not out of politeness, but sincerely. Sometimes, over tea, Elena would tell stories about Mark. She remembered how Mark used to run towards her as a child with a bouquet of dandelions, laughing and calling her the most beautiful mother. Maria listened with sincere interest, feeling that her mother-in-law's past had become a part of their common life. One day, Elena took out an old photo of Mark and put it on a shelf in the living room. Now it was a place where not only memories were kept, but also the love that unites them all. However, the story did not end there. A few months later, Elena received a letter. The letter was from a man who claimed to be a friend of her late son. This man wrote that for many years he had wanted to find Elena in order to tell her what really happened on that fateful night. The fire that claimed Mark's life was not accidental. It was a tragedy provoked by the actions of his friend, who was trying to hide his prank. Elena, after reading the letter, cried for a long time. Maria and Alexander were by her side, supporting her. But this letter also became a new starting point for her. She no longer felt guilty about what had happened. Instead, she decided to keep Mark's memory alive through good deeds. She began volunteering at an orphanage, helping children who she believed needed warmth and love. Now their family wasn't just cohesive. She became an example of how the pain of the past can transform into a source of strength and kindness. And although the shadows of the past have always remained a part of their lives, they have learned to see them as a reminder of how important it is to love and support each other.